Right, so I think it's time to get this engine tidied up, cleaned up, because there's a bit of surface rust on it. So it needs to be just wide brushed back down. It's been sitting for a long time, so a little bit of oxidization. Just give it a proper clean up, obviously, to get it in the car. It's a brand new built engine, as you know by now. Everything's new on it. Engine's still new inside, never even had oil in it. You know, all the cams have been polished, head's all been decked and everything. The whole thing's been built. It's a shame I ain't got pictures of it. And then we can get the gearbox back on it, the clutch back on it, and get it back into this engine bay, because it's about time we get this car together, get this car back on the road. You've seen the build. Obviously I haven't had a lot of time to do it. I've been doing it here and there whenever I can, but I've been cracking through all the projects, and we're on to this one now, so we can really get on with this one, that silver one. Right, there you go. So as if by magic, engine's all painted up again, looking fresh again, like it did when I first put it in. Probably going to change the colour of this rocker cover, maybe go for red. I'm a bit fed up with the whole lot of silver, and it's a ton harder to keep clean. Red car, red rock cover, maybe. I'm not sure yet. Box has been painted and everything and really clean. It had been sitting obviously in the garage with the engine for a while. You see how dirty the engine got, so just giving this a clean up now. Gonna hose it down, dry it off, and then we can get this just dry out all the bell housing so no rust or anything gets inside, and then we can get this attached to the car. I've just pulled out all the engine mounts and everything at the back of the car that I had. Just going to give them a quick clean up as well. So I'm going to be replacing the slave cylinder with a brand new one as well. I never ever split the gearbox and engine to do anything, especially if you're pulling it out of the car, without changing the slave cylinder. They are quite reliable. They do last a long time, but you know, they do wear out over time. If you're ever doing a clutch, obviously change it as well. It's a brand new clutch that we're going to be putting on there. FTE, GM, they're all great slave cylinders. Just don't overextend them. I'll show you how to bleed them. It's just bleeding them the same as the brakes. Right, so I'm just going to quickly clean up this firewheel. Just got a bit of surface rust on there where it's been sitting. Clean all this off. Get the clutch back on it. Right, so the clutch that I'm using for this is a Luck clutch, but this is for a C20 LET. It's the 4x4 version, so it's got a lot more clamping load. But I want to let you in a little secret. So obviously this is just a full face clutch plate. See the clutch code for it there. And the cover plate, which is this, is exactly the same cover plate, the C20 LET one, that Helix use and call it their heavy duty cover plate. And the reason I know this is because I've used enough of them, and I've even got one sitting under there that I'm going to show you. This is bought directly from Helix, heavy duty cover plate, and I'm going to show you how it's exactly the same. Right, so here's a side-by-side comparison. So obviously I marked it up Helix so that I knew exactly which one it was. And you can see, I'm never going to use this again, it's just for comparison purposes. You can see it's had a paddle clutch on there where it gets all chewed up. Paddle clutches, they create hot spots. If I sanded that down quickly, so I just quickly sanded it off so you can see all the chewed metal marks. You don't want to use that again. You can see the heat spots or whatever on it. So this is exactly what they use as their heavy duty cover plate. Now they charge 240 quid for this, and you see what they do here is they machine off where it says Luck, where it says the part numbers, etc. So you can see side by side here where it's got Germany there, they've machined it off here. Where it's got GmbH and Co, they've machined it off here. And then where it says BUHL, that's machined off here. And then where it's got Luck, that's machined from there. And then Luck was machined along here. That is exactly what cover plate they use. One of them they sent me once. The reason I know this is it had a part number still on it, and I compared the part number directly to the C20 LET clutch, and it was exactly the same. And if you look at them in comparison right there, you can see they're identical. So luckily for me, when it comes to aligning these clutches, I've destroyed so many gearboxes over the years. I just cut the main shaft off them, and then we can just use that as an alignment tool. So that if I'm ever running a twin plate clutch on the really high power 600 horsepower cars, there's no way of lining these up without a proper main shaft tool. If you haven't got one of them, there's no way you're going to ever line that shaft up. So self-explanatory really with these. Gearbox side, this is the flywheel side. The flywheel side's always the flat side, and you can see on the gearbox sides the raised side where the pressure plate goes. So it's crucial you get this alignment done properly. You see how easy the main shaft makes it. That's perfectly loose still, but the clutch is perfectly centre. I normally buy these bolts brand new because they're so cheap. If you use second-hand ones, make sure these threads are thoroughly cleaned, because they're only fine threads and they'll strip out the thread on the flywheel. You ain't torquing them up too much. I'll give you the torque readings when I do them up. So you literally want to leave them all hand tight and then do them up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like that, so they're opposites each other, and it'll clamp down these springs nicely. So the torque setting for these bolts, always use new ones, 11 foot-pounds. Right, so let's get this slave cylinder on. So a tiny dab of copper grease on the shaft just makes it just a bit better, smoother engagement, and this stops the rust building up on the shaft. A little bit of grease there. You can use silicone grease as well if you want. Now with the slave cylinder, slide it over the shaft, but don't put any of the bolts in yet, because you want to get this threaded hydraulic tube on first. So you see the threads are so fine, if you don't do this first you're going to strip them, so just do them finger tight so that it's in there and it starts to thread off. That's an 11mm on there, in case you're wondering. And then start bolting it up. So on the back of this is a seal, stops all the gearbox fluid coming into the gearbox bell housing. So just do them up finger tight so you're not going to strip any of the threads. They are a T30 Torx. So I'll do it up to 10 Newton meters. Sometimes you can just nip them up with the ratchet. Don't do them up too tight, you'll strip the threads out the back of the aluminium bell housing. Right, so now just do this up. Don't forget to do that up, it's going to leak everywhere. Torque these up, and that's the slave cylinder done. Right, so let's get this gearbox back onto the engine again. Not that it matters, but when I bought all these bolts, they was brand new in the packet from GM, so they've literally never even seen the road yet. Well, here we go. After all that work, the engine is finally ready to go back in. So, lovely fresh engine back in the engine bay. Just give the engine bay a wipe down. You can see all the brakes and the clutch and everything's ready to go. So once the engine's back in, I'm going to get the mounts and that on, I can drop her down. So can get tyres fitted for the alloys, get her rolling again. So we're on a big step to getting this thing out on the road. So I want to get this out on the road for about autumn time. That'd be great. Obviously been working on all the rest of the projects and it's took up so much time. This one's been put on the back burner, but now I can get on with it. So the best thing about having no slam panel in the front here is you can literally pop the engine in. So obviously I'll put it up so it's more flat. You can literally just pop the engine in and then turn it inside the engine bay. Makes it so quick instead of having to go over the top of the slam panel. And also what I do is I take off the oil filter. So whenever you put one of these engines back in, you probably have a load of problems with it clearing the chassis leg on this left hand side. Take off the oil filter because it sticks right out here and it makes it a ton easier. So you see how quickly I can get them engines into the engine bay. That's why I can pull them out so quick. And you see as well, I put sheets all down the side of the chassis leg, so we didn't get no scratching or anything on the chassis leg. It's the easiest way to do it. So just hope it helps some people in the future. You can see how tight it is down this chassis leg. Perfect clearance now. So just lined it up with this bottom one. Going to get these the engine mount in, and then the gearbox mount in, and then the two front and back torque mounts. So I'll do that now. So nothing special on the engine mounts. Obviously the front torque one is the important one. So I've gone polybush on that one. I've got about 5 or 6 of them. So yeah, going to also put a polybush in that one and a polybush in that one. That one's getting replaced at some point anyway, so it don't matter. That's just the mount that bolts onto the subframe. There's a mount already in the subframe. So the fun part right now is to find all the bolts that I've had to put away because the project's been so long over the time. That I've put bolts and everything. I've got boxes and boxes of them. But luckily I could go through these boxes. I can tell exactly where these bolts, every one of them goes. It's kind of like a weird trait. So the one I'm looking for is that one there. That one there. So comment in the comment section if you're into Z-lets. It's part of what I'm doing right now. What is that bolt for? So there's 4 of them. I'll give you a clue. There's 4 of them. What one is that one for? So you should know me by now and know that I'm not going to leave parts in the engine bay tatty. So just went over the engine mounts, gearbox mounts and that with a bit of fresh paint just to freshen it up a little bit. So whenever I'm putting them in this way, I always put this gearbox mount on first on the chassis leg. And that way you can position the engine backwards and forwards. And then you can just jack it up exactly to the level you need and then put on the secondary engine mount on this side. And then the gearbox mount, the torque mount on the front, that goes on last. Always put the back one on first, otherwise you're never going to get the bolts in for that one. Then you can just move it backwards and forwards, get all 4 mounts in. Right, so you can see at the back of the engine, what I normally do is put the bolt and the nut through the top of the rear gearbox mount. You can see there, that one's through already. Can't do it and film at the same time. So, and then you can literally rock the engine backwards and forwards like this and get this bolt here in first. Once you've done that, so if I pulled it out quickly, right, so I just pulled it out quickly so you can see what I mean. So to get that gearbox mount in there, you've got all this play to rock the engine backwards and forwards, but obviously the engine's got to go into its right position. So you can see that that bolt doesn't line up, so you have to rock the engine backwards to get that mount in. Once that mount's in, that's the hardest part done. This is the easy part. You have a little bit of play still in it like that to get this mount in. And there we go, engine is finally in. Looks brilliant in there, looks really clean. I want to change the rocker cover, just a bit of contrast on the silver. Engine's in there solid, all fresh new mounts, polybush. Just going to put a polybush on this one. And little finishing touch, obviously this block here, this hole here that I really hate. Don't know why. I've worked on so many of these Z-lets and I do not know why, but they don't come with these bungs from the factory. And here's a brand new one from GM that I'm going to put in there. So them little finishing touches, they make all the difference. It just stops all the crud and that getting in the back of the flywheel and the clutch. So I've got to fit these subframe braces on the back of the subframe. Obviously the subframe's full of solid bushes at the minute. I was trying to remove this sticker because it's on the wrong side. I was going to put it on this side. Obviously these are brand new. It would have been nice, but couldn't get it off even with a heat gun. So I just have to take them off with some adhesive remover. And we've got an all new subframe bolts as well to go through the subframe. This is the one that goes through the subframe and this is the support bracket. So just putting on this last bracket, you can see all the subframe is all solid bushes. In case you're new to the channel, go and watch the previous videos of me doing all this restoration underneath here. Everything's brand new, the heat shields, the whole lot, tank heat shield. But when I've done this, I didn't do it the easy way like most people do. I stripped it back to bare metal. You can see I've got none of that rubbery nasty seam sealer under here. It's all galvanised again, all protected with zinc coating, and welded up all the chassis legs. So go back and watch the previous videos. You can see everything underneath is brand new. And there we go, support brackets all on with the nice brand new bolts. Still looking as fresh as the day I done it under here. Obviously it hasn't been on the road yet. All the chassis looking fresh, all brand new. So it's going to be an absolute joy to drive this. If you see it at a show, get underneath it, have a look, tell me what you think.